I think they've both done a very good job of describing it, but I will tell you one of the things we look for is synergy, the ability for all of the parties to get something out of it. You can't just want to sell a product. There has to be a reason that each person gets something, and at the end you have a win-win-win. Too many times you have situations in which someone's just doing it because, well, I need a brand, I need a name. They all need to have a real win opportunity. And that is one of the great programs, as Charles will tell you, are one that go on forever, is that everybody's winning every day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That is the key. It's got to be good for all the different parties. I have a few more questions, but before I do that, I'd like to ask the audience if there's any questions out here. Certainly your questions are quite valuable. So this gentleman, please.
Sir, at the very outset, you started saying that globally, to the tune of something like 180 billion USD is the overall size, as a ballpark figure for franchising global industry.
Yes.
And I was there in the session before. Somebody made a mention that Indian industry as per INR is something like between 5 to 6,000, which is roughly around 1 billion USD, Mm-hmm. Clearly it is in the infancy. But what kind of traction you see, as Mr. NT said, that the undercurrent is very strong in India, and you also said that in most of the companies global that, growth story, India is invariably existing. So going forward, what kind of growth do you envisage?
Well, that's hard for me to predict. What I can tell you is that a lot of international companies look at a couple of different factors in this market. One is the overall size of the population. Two is that there's a very large middle class with purchasing power, so there's a market here. Three is that there's a great awareness in this market of international brands, especially within the last several years because of all the new technology and communication. It's a lot easier for a brand from, say, the United States or Europe or wherever to gain global awareness. So with that global awareness also comes a desire by consumers to have a closer connection with that property, and that's usually done through licensed merchandise. I think another good factor is, again, since most of the global licensors are based in the United States and other English-speaking countries, the fact that India is largely an English-speaking country is also a very desirable component. So, to give you an idea of a percentage of growth, maybe one of my panelists would like to take a shot at that. That would be hard for me to do. Anybody?
No, I won't even try. But I will tell you that the growth is driven by the fact that the population becomes more educated every day in India. And that is a statistic that Franchise India, if you go over to the other side, will tell you the fastest growing franchises in India are education. With education comes knowledge. With knowledge comes interest in the world. And therefore you get teenagers who just have to have, Daddy, I have to have that shirt. And that will grow it, and there is a large amount of people here. Anybody else? No, it's dangerous, by the way, with reporters around to say figures. Because you come back, they'll say, well, you said last time.
Yeah, well, something I can tell you is that we opened our first office in China about 9 years ago. And at that time, again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the volume of licensed sales of merchandise in China was about $1 billion, I think, and I'm estimating. We've devoted a lot of time and effort into, as Rob said, education. We've done seminars in all the major Chinese cities, and we've had people working in that market too. For 2013, the latest estimate I heard of the size of the Chinese market is, I think it was about $5.4 billion. So it's grown 5 times over in that time. So, and I think a lot of people equate the Indian market as, with a lot of similarities to the Chinese market. So I think it's a matter of education, of people here learning how the industry works, learning best practices in licensing. And I think you have a great opportunity because there's several resources for you to see what's been successful and how it's been successful. So, again, I hate to put a number on it, but I think the potential for this, the growth in this market is just enormous. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hey guys, so this was briefly covered when you guys were talking, but basically I just wanted to know, as a licensor, typically, or like not necessarily you guys, or just like generally any licensor, how involved would you want to be with, like, in terms of giving out the license to a licensee? Would it just be in the first stages of like product development and approvals, or would you rather usually be involved all the way till the end, including marketing, distribution, manufacturing, or do you guys prefer, a typical licensor, does he prefer to just sign the contract once you know the capabilities and go on from there?
Do you want to take first? Okay. Thanks for a good question. Yeah, obviously you have the first hurdles. That's for sure for anybody who's licensed out the IP that they have. You want to see that the product development and it sort of ticks all the right boxes. You want to see that the approvals are there and the quality is there. But over and beyond that, I can only reflect what we do. We have a licensing agent here, Dream Theater, who works with us as and becomes sort of like our internal team. And together with that, we'd like to extend as much help as we can, because it's, as Rob says, win-win-win. I mean, it's no good we all benefit only if we're successful at the end of the day, and we're only successful if the consumer finds it and likes it and buys it. One more thing I'd like to add, which wasn't added last time. I mean, I've been in India for nearly 4 years. I'm not an expert, but I made some sort of observation. And one, in the beginning, people tend to come and they said to me, well, India is just a price-driven market. And I fully disagree. I think it's a value-driven market, which is completely different. It can still mean the same, that you don't want to pay unless you find the value in there. But it's not a price-driven market as such. Yes, you pay if there's a value, but somebody charges you, 300 rupees for a bottle of water. I say, no, it's not worth it. So I think it's a question of when the value is there, and there, I think this licensing strategy can be really helpful in the market like that. And you were just making a comment on that, Daddy, I just have to have that, which is really something that gives a great opportunity into this market for everybody who wants to participate and be on that market.
I would like to answer you in a little different way, in a sense that the basic step after the contracts and those things are done and you're getting into a relationship of a licensee is that the licensor would typically share with you the style guide, and then the licensee, he designs the products and then sends it across the artworks for approval and things like that. Now there's a lot of work and traction possible between the licensor and licensee to go to the extent of not only looking at the critical restrictions in terms of the design guidelines, but also participate more creatively. And at our end, we do that. We just don't act as somebody who says, okay, don't do this and you can do this and you don't do this. But we support our licensees in terms of giving them a lot of creative inputs and a lot of guidelines and packaging ideas and Also a lot of research, what we have, we share it with the licensees, and also we take those kind of information from them. We have a certain amount of meetings and discussions where we do discuss the product development, and that basically the whole idea is to come out with a unique product, a very simple product, but I mean what Auntie said was right, a value proposition in a very regular product, if you can build in while designing, it helps in getting numbers. So it's a necessity there.
We are in the business of making the cash register ring. You can't do that if you abandon the process. It means, your question is, you better be there, all of us together in every process, checking it all the way to the audit. The audit. We first had a seminar here on audits, and they asked me to speak because an audit, and those of you who don't know what it is, means that when you have a successful campaign, you want to know how much you actually sold. So you want to know what the SKUs, how many were sold and so forth, and that audit shows how well everybody's done. So you want to have a business that's good enough that you need an audit, because that means everybody's done their job to the point that the cash register rings. So you cannot let up on any part of it. You must all be in it together. As I said, win-win-win, but we all must follow. You can't fall down on approvals. You can't fall down on follow-up in the stores. Everything has to be always. It is a business of very small details.
Agreed. As I said when I opened, I've been with Lima for 16 years, but I have never done a licensing deal in my life. I run the trade organization, so I'm kind of an observer of the industry, not as much a participant as our panelists. But certainly, when you're a licensee, you're representing a company that has invested significant revenues into the development of their intellectual property. And they are not going to be too likely to just grant a license to somebody and then not pay attention to what's going on. The key, I believe, is in communication, always having a steady flow of communication, letting your licensor know what you're doing. As Rob said, the approval process needs to be followed. So again, I think it's going to be, there'll be a lot closer communication than just the licensor granting a license and say, okay, here you go, do a great job, and we'll see you later. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to understand what kind of a control mechanism do you guys have, like to control fakes and counterfeits, and maybe even the licensee going beyond the quantum that he's been given the license for?
He was asking what controls do you have over the licensee, to monitor the products that go out into the marketplace and counterfeits and things of that nature?
We have secret shoppers. We have the company, which we hope is checking. You have the fact that if there are counterfeits in the market, the person who's doing the non-counterfeit is going to turn them in really fast. It is a perpetual problem. But I will tell you many companies go into markets to protect themselves against counterfeits. You ask how? If you are already in the market and you have a product and you have the registered trademark and it's there, it makes it much more difficult for other people to counterfeit it. But it is a perpetual problem in the marketplace. Do either of you have any thoughts?
Somebody is producing a counterfeit, and the other is that a licensee is going beyond the limit. Like he has a license, let's say, for 100 products, but he's producing 200 of them. then how do you control that?
I think part one was answered by Robert, and part two is pure piracy, right? And couple of ways we try to address that. One is piracy we've noticed is more in products where those product categories where either the licensed product or the originals are not available. So one way to control piracy again is to get into all product categories as fast as possible, and again endorsing what Charles did mention about that. It's about if you have a original product, piracy becomes a little tough. Besides that, there are agencies, investigating agencies, which do a continuous surveillance. We have a lot of input, intelligence input coming in from our sales team, from our existing licensees, from the trade. And then there is a professional investigative agencies which operate, which do surveillance, keep a tracking, and then raids are conducted where the goods and stuffs are seized, the guys are arrested, and that's the way. But that's we do all those things. It's a part of the process, but yeah, it's something to live with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the fact of the matter is there'll always be some merchandise in the marketplace that maybe is not fully licensed, or, as we say, went out the back door instead of the front door of the licensee. You know, one thing that, that I see in countries where there's an emerging economy is the people who are purchasing licensed merchandise really want to buy the real thing. It's almost like a status symbol. It's a lot more prestigious to own the real product than something they bought in a flea market that's a cheap imitation. So I think that's an encouraging development that we'll see continue to grow, that people will start to shun the cheap fakes and really go out of the way to find the real merchandise. I think we're just about out of time, so I would like to thank my panelists for some great insights that they provided. Thank you, the audience, for your questions and your attention. And I wish you a very successful show and a very successful future in licensing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for such an interesting session. It gave us an opportunity to hear your viewpoints. I'd like to request Charles to help us hand over the mementos to our participants.
Yes. Yes, lovely pouring. Okay. Nancy, for you, sir. Thank you very much.
We could have a round of applause, please.
Samir, thank you so much. Rob, thank you. Now it's your turn. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you again.